To Bishop Nulty, to Father John, and to the poor Clare sisters for giving me the great opportunity to be here today. It's a great honour for me to be able to speak. As you can see, my voice and my pride have been dented significantly by the football match yesterday, so please bear with me in relation to my hoarse voice. I haven't spoken from an altar except on one occasion since I was an altar boy, so in many ways I'm a fish out of water. And I will say at the start that I am wholly unqualified to speak to you here today. But I do believe that it's important for people to be able to be who they are, if they have faith, to be able to communicate that with pride. We want a country where everybody is able to be who they are to their full extent without fear or favour. And that's what I'm going to speak to you about here tonight. The first thing I want to do is to pay tribute to Father John, Bishop Nulty, and all the priests of this parish. I don't think people really understand the level of work that priests and religious do in our community. I don't think people have any idea of the hours, the 12 and 14-hour days that these people do for us and for their faith. And, you know, from administering the sacraments to helping the sick in hospitals, to funerals and supporting families who've lost loved ones, to faith formation in schools, to the plethora of church-based charities that they keep going, and all of the pastoral work that happens. I don't think people realize the burden of work that are on so few shoulders in this country. And I've never heard a priest mention this once in all of my life. And I think it's something we need to think about and to pay tribute to them as well. And I don't think you'd know from the media, for example, the great work that the priests and religious do in our community. Ireland would be a radically different place if it wasn't for the priests and what they do and the faith that they sustain in our lives. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. 2.5 years ago in Creesla, County Donegal, there was a terrible explosion. Now, what would the aftermath of that tragedy have looked like if the faith, the solace and the support of Father John Doe Duffy wasn't there for that particular community? There's no doubt that he couldn't prevent the shock and the numbness, the pain and the trauma. But what he did do through his faith and his guidance was create a slow journey out of that darkness and back into healing from that particular community. And I'll give you another example. Right during COVID, priests administered to the sick. They supported grieving families. They said funeral masses when only about 10 people were allowed to attend those funeral masses. Dozens of priests died, no doubt, because they caught COVID because of the work that they did. Now, after COVID, there was a special commemoration of all of the emergency services that helped to sustain people during that crisis. Every single profession and group of people that were involved at that time were thanked, except for one, and that were the priests and religious of this country, which is a shocking thing to say. Now, I don't think that's by accident, and it's certainly not unique in relation to what's happening in this country. I do think that some within the media and some within politics have sought to airbrush the incredibly valuable contribution that the priests and religious make in this country, and also that faith makes in this country as well. I honestly believe that faith and the church has provided for generations an invisible glue that has held so many communities together. Our communities are stronger, they're healthier, they're more resilient because of our faith and our church. And, you know, I think there has been a chilling effect on people in terms of their faith in the past. I know of people who, you know, have been shy about telling about their faith in their workplace or in sports or in the pub, explaining that faith is an important element to them. And I think that's unfortunate, because every single Sunday, hundreds of thousands of Irish citizens attend Mass in this country, many of them with their chests brimming with love for God. Many of them with a deep personal relationship with God. And that personal relationship giving them the emotional and spiritual sustenance to be able to meet the challenges that they meet on that weekly basis. We will never hear that story on the radio or on the television, on the news. And even when the media have been talking about the church a lot in recent times, they focus on a very narrow spectrum. But the actual reason for the church, the personal relationship between individuals and Christ, is completely airbrushed out of that story. And I think that's a serious mistake, and I think we're poorer from it. I also believe in a pluralist republic, and I mentioned that earlier, that everybody should be able to be who they are, no matter what that is, without fear or favor. I don't think people should hide who they are. People should be able to express what it is that makes them tick. In a country that in many ways dresses up in the colors of diversity, it seems that only views that are welcome are those of the prevailing wind. And we need to change that in this country. In the Dáil, it's true as well. People can be inspired by Karl Marx. They can be inspired by James Connolly. They can be inspired by Margaret Thatcher. But if you say that you're inspired by your faith, they will come down on you like a ton of bricks. And that's a mistake. Now, I think we all have a role in relation to this particular issue. If we hide our faith, we just add to the ebb of faith within the general public. But if we express it openly and confidently in the public, we add to the flow of that faith in the general public. If we compartmentalize our faith as if it's only a private issue, we only subtract from the general faith within society. We should not compartmentalize it. We should express it openly and confidently as well. Now, where does that lead politics and religion? It's a big question. It certainly is. I believe personally that all policies should be based on facts and on science, that decisions must be based on research and evidence. But there are real dangers if there are no value systems in politics. There must be a moral compass in society. Nuclear power is neither bad nor good. It's simply science. But it's a moral compass that tells us to use it for generation of energy or for war. And I do obviously believe in the separation of church and state, but I don't believe in the separation of church and people who make up that state. And that's an important issue. The state should not be directed by the church, but it should be reflected of the values of the people. And I don't believe that's what's happened so far in this country. But I do believe that things are changing. I think that there is an inflection point happening in society. I think people are becoming tired of the commercial treadmill of life, tired of the addictions to screens and the constant flow of meaningless information. I think people are hungry for something of value. They realize that real relationships with people are the most important things that we have. They're fed up of being distracted from those particular issues. And I think there's a danger that we can throw the baby out with the bath water. You know, in many ways, we've replaced a value system of generations of Irish people simply with a commercial individualism where happiness is based on instant gratification or instant consumption. And that's not who we are as Irish people. I am very hopeful that we're going to see change. And the referendums that we saw just a couple of years ago, I think is a sign of people starting to think independently and think for themselves. I think we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity now for real renewal of our values, of our faith, and actually of society as well. And in the last couple of weeks has been a really important time to be a Catholic. The loss of Pope Francis has been a difficult time for so many people. I think his recognition, or the recognition of Pope Francis by so many within the world, has shown how important of a figure he has been. And I think that he was a signpost in many ways of the importance to return to a generous spirit of love, the ones that we saw in the first reading and in the gospel there as well. And I think that the excitement in relation to Pope Leo is also palpable as well. It's the first time that I've seen people truly emotional and excited about their faith across the country. And I think from him and his life, he has worked as a missionary. And I think if we are to try to emulate him as a pope, I think we need to look at ourselves in many ways as missionaries too. I think there's no doubt that there are dark forces in the world at the moment, people trying to fill the vacuum that I just spoke about, people on the extremes, politically looking to make people feel that it's all about identity and not about community, people looking to put in experimental ideologies that have great costs to our children as well. How do we change? How do we make sure that we are a voice for good? And I think it's about rediscovering our value system. It's about the common sense of Ireland and the compassion based on our Christianity. And the two readings today definitely point to that particular issue. These are startling readings in many ways. And it also reminds me of the great element of the church, that it's about being kind to those who are sick and needy. It's about turning the other cheek in relation to those who seek to do us harm. And the Beatitudes, are so important in terms of that. And that's one of the reasons why I have a faith. Because the messages that we hear, these are not messages of humanity. Look around the world and see the violence and destruction that happens. The message of the church are not from this world. The message of the church are a godly message. And I think for me, that's one of the proofs of my faith. Another reason for my faith is I have no doubt for a second that the wonderfulness of creation, the incredibleness of nature, this planet, this universe, it could not have come from nothing. In science, there's a saying, there's no effect without a cause. And it's a fairy tale if we think that all of this fantastic world that we have has come from nothing, that there's no creator. I absolutely believe that as another proof for me that there is a God. The third issue that I would say is the issue of justice. If there is no God, there is no justice. And whether a person has lived a good life or a life of evil, there is no difference to the ultimate end in relation to those lives. And there's nobody here that is not hardwired into a sense of justice. And I believe that is another proof for me of there being a God. In relation to that issue of missionary work, there's no doubt that it's a difficult issue to do, that people need strength to stand against the prevailing winds within our society. And we need confidence to do it. But people often ask, where do you get strength? Well, I can think of no better place to get strength than from here. Every day, thousands of people gain strength from their churches. Every day, millions of people are fortified in the work that they do in relation to strength from their churches. If people are looking for strength, strength is provided right here, right now, in abundance. Also, people ask, how do you make change? Well, I'm a very big believer of working and doing. Saint Benedict stated that to work is to pray, and to pray is to work. And one of the big challenges I've had for the last 10 years is to draw the dots between our value system and trying to achieve the country that we want to achieve. I think a big part of that is communication. I think we have a lot to learn in relation to communication. For example, we mentioned all of the wonderful work that the churches do. Trócaire, St. Vincent de Paul, the disability services, the numerous charities, Peter McVerry, Sister Stan. I believe parishes like this, by putting newsletters into doors right around this town, can educate people to the value that this church brings to the people. Political parties reach hundreds of thousands of people through social media on a weekly basis, just with about 5 or 6 people creating content. I believe it's important that the church starts to communicate with a new generation of people in the mediums that they are consuming on a daily basis as well. Another suggestion in relation to this is that to make sure that we have time to share who we are to the people in our families or in our communities. The first point of contact your friends and family have in many ways with this church, with your faith, is you. And individuals standing up for what they believe, without fear or favor, with confidence, with generosity, and with love, are probably one of the strongest conduits to actually sharing that message with people around the country. I do believe that the message of Christ is revolutionary. I believe that it's the most impactful thing that anybody can do, and I believe it's godly. How far that message travels in this community and elsewhere is up to you. Gurb Mila Mahagwif Galer.